Hola, thank you for streaming or downloading the 1730 podcast. I'm Tsepo Pule, and with this podcast mini-series, I'm documenting COVID-19 stories from regular South Africans. This podcast has evolved from being about my journey and struggles in dealing with retrenchment to highlighting stories of survival and triumph within the backdrop of a global pandemic. In this episode, I'm catching up with a friend of mine, well, actually a very good friend of mine, Injayam Fede. Direct translation, my dog for life. Slums and I met in high school 21 years ago. He is the guy that introduced me to my wife, Utesa. This dude is one of the most amazing human beings I've ever known. Since Sol is such an amazing dude, it was shocking and scary when we heard him and his wife contracted COVID. Later, Sol and his family would go on to lose 3 siblings to COVID in a matter of a week. 3 loved ones gone in 1 week. It was a devastating time, and I think it still is. As you can imagine, I had no idea of how to support him, but we rallied around him as best we can, and he's here today, stronger than ever. So, my biggest thing about 2020 was that I was retrenched. And for the first time, I found myself out of work. And it was a new situation. And obviously, COVID, the pandemic, a lot of things have been new for a lot of people around the world. How would you sum up the past 18 months, Nze, just for you generally?
It's been tough, Chief. I won't lie. It hasn't been easy. Although there's some positives that have came out of it, but overall it's been tough. March 2020. One is coming from an activation over a week in Polokwane. Then get back, like told on a Monday, look, tomorrow we're going to be working from home indefinitely. So we don't even know how long. Then, you go home and you're like, okay, this is going to be my workspace. You know, when you're used to that, rush hour traffic, you need to drop kids at school, you need, just the normal day-to-day business. No matter what when you've gotten used to it.
Yeah.
It's just that thing of waking up and having to dress up and having to, working for a corporate, you have to be formal and all of that kind of stuff. And then boom, now you have to wake up and work in your PJs. It was tough because you have to change your life.
In episode 3, Laurette, a people and culture director, spoke about the challenges faced by people and companies alike during the pandemic. She expressed what are some of the biggest emotional issues her company dealt with. Here's a clip from that previous conversation.
People have dealt with a lot, like single people during COVID. One of the biggest emotional issues we've been dealing with is anxiety, loneliness and abandonment. Issues that you can't understand really when you have a family and you're surrounded by people. And the anxiety and just the fear of getting exposed to COVID, but the fear of dying.
Although she was primarily talking about staff members that are single or people that live alone, these issues are relatable to any of us, and Sol was no different. Even though he had family and people around him, he still felt loneliness. He felt like he was alone when his company first told him about COVID-19 and having to work from home or work remotely.
Honestly speaking, from a work front, I felt for the first few months, I was just alone. When you're just being put, you're like, okay, you're just being sent home, work, and just get things done. And now you're just like, wow, okay, what do I do now? Because my line of work mostly is activations, being out there, in the different provinces, doing activations and stuff. Now you're just like, oh gosh, what do I do now? Because now everything moves to digital. Then you have to change how you think, how you do things and all of that.
But fortunately, they didn't let people go, no? At your work.
They didn't, although they've done what we call a realignment. So I'm grateful to still have a job. We've realigned, I think, twice, 3 times now. And still have a job, still continuing and still working, still being challenged.
Yeah.
And I think it also depends on the person, because you have to, as a self, say, I need to challenge myself. I need to learn new things.
Yeah.
I need to align with where the business is headed. I need to find ways to make this work, So you need to be innovative. They're challenging you as an individual to think out of the box.
Yeah.
To think of better ways, And basically, this is probably going to be our life for God knows how long.
According to South Africa's Department of Health, as of September 28, 2021, South Africa had conducted over 17 million COVID tests, identified close to 3 million positive cases, and sadly, around 87,000 people had died. At the time of the recording, the World Health Organization reported over 233 million COVID cases globally, with just over 4.7 million deaths confirmed, with Africa recording just over 8 million COVID cases. A total of 6.1 billion vaccine doses have been administered globally, with South Africa having administered around 6.8 million doses. We are still far behind from the rest of the wealthier countries, and the story for the rest of the African continent looks even bleaker. These same wealthier countries are now debating offering their citizens booster shots when the African continent goes without. Here's a clip from Global Citizen Live to help paint the picture of the unequal and frankly inhumane disparity in the distribution and access to vaccines. In the clip, they interviewed Dr. Thato Mosehle and Africa CDC Director Dr. John Nkengasong.
Those first few weeks when the pandemic hit were really filled with a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fears, but there was also a sense of maybe this thing is not real, maybe it's not going to hit South Africa.
To date, Africa has reported over 8.1 million cases of COVID-19 and claimed over 206,000 lives, and the true figures are likely higher.
Our main goal right now is to vaccinate at least 60 up to 70% of our population so that if we have that immunity, we can move forward.
Amidst a devastating third wave, while richer nations accumulate surplus and make plans to give boosters, the majority of African citizens remain without access to the vaccines they need.
Currently in South Africa, we are at a 28% coverage of the first shot. So right now as a country, we are not even in a position to think of booster shots.
In Africa,
Dr. John Nkengasong, Director of the Africa Centers for Disease Control, is working with partners to ensure Africa has enough vaccines to protect at least 70% of people in each country.
as we speak, as a continent of 1.3 billion people, only about 3.5% of the population have been fully immunized by the COVID vaccines, which is extremely unfortunate.
To change our future, Africa CDC has joined forces in solidarity with researchers, scientists, and local manufacturers to establish a mRNA vaccine technology transfer hub based in South Africa.
The hub in Africa, it begins to allow you to produce those vaccines locally.
Global pharmaceutical leaders can support this effort if they make that choice.
If we should work together and make sure that everyone has herd immunity, we can all, as a world, move past this pandemic.
No one is protected until everybody is protected.
For Ronam Africa, the situation is dire, but we are a resilient people. We have fought off disease and imposters on our land before. I have no doubt we'll conquer this pandemic as well. Now back to Zol. I asked him how he thinks he got COVID. He reckons it was a trip to Braamfontein, downtown Johannesburg, to sort out a municipal bill.
Braam being Braam, and everyone is there to pretty much do the same. It's a long queue. You go upstairs, downstairs, on the street, you're standing, then inside you get seats, There's no social distancing. That's number one. You get there, you have to sign in, they have to take your temperature, the usual. There's that spray, you don't even know if it's proper or not, So ultimately, I think that's where I got COVID. Because a week later, we'll be chilling, at home. The heater's on, it's cold, it's June. But I'll be feeling like I'm in cold, iced water. I'll be shivering. And everyone is looking at me. And I'm sitting with a blanket and there's a heater. and I'm wearing warm clothes. Then I started thinking something is wrong here. Getting headaches, forever tired. And I was like, shucks, I need to go get help. I need to go to the doctor and see what's wrong. Get there, the doctor looks at me and I'm sweating and feverish and all of that. So doctor said, look, you need to go get tested. I'm not going to do anything. I'll just give you a letter, reference letter. You go get tested. Get there, boom. Test 2 days later, results came back, I'm positive. Luckily for me, when that week started, I was already steaming. I was already drinking all the meds, vitamin C, D, you name it, ACC and all the stuff. Then I'm like, oh, shucks, I've actually got COVID. It doesn't click up until you feel like, okay, I'm dying. Because now the pain starts being real. I'm tired. As you know, I love food.
Yeah.
I lost my appetite totally. For that 2 weeks, 10 days, even longer, I went with one toast a day. That's how much I was eating. And I couldn't finish a toast. One slice of toast. Couldn't taste anything, couldn't smell anything. Taste is gone. Appetite is gone. They made me my favorite foods, meat, everything. I just couldn't eat it. Didn't have appetite. I just didn't. All I wanted to do was just sleep. I'll drink my meds, sleep. And now you need to isolate. I'm isolating in the bedroom. And obviously the wife is the only one who comes in, gives me food and checks on me, gives me meds. My now late sister also came through. She's a nurse. She was a nurse. She would come through with all meds, from a clinic and, trying to see what's the issue and all of that.
I rang up a doctor friend of mine. I asked her what COVID actually is and how does it affect humans. She also offered her expert input on the need to vaccinate. Her name is Makhotso Mhlanga. Here's the good doctor.
Hi, so I'm Makhotso Mhlanga. I am a rheumatologist, or recently qualified rheumatologist, and I currently work at Charlotte Maxeke Academic Hospital. I predominantly work with patients with connective tissue disorders, so things such as lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, but obviously because of the recent COVID-19 pandemic, we also see a whole host of patients with COVID-19 infections. So what is COVID? So COVID basically is a respiratory infection. It predominantly presents as what we know as COVID pneumonia at the moment, right? It's predominantly caused by a virus, so the SARS-CoV-2 virus, and literally spreads from person to person via respiratory droplets. So when people sneeze, cough, when they're talking, so those respiratory droplets cause the spread of this virus from person to person. So it can affect really different parts of your respiratory system, but the biggest issue is when patients have infection of their lung tissue specifically, because that causes the predominance or preponderance of issues for patients.
It is bad enough to have COVID and think you're on your deathbed. But what do you do when your partner gets it as well, with a 2-year-old to look after?
And then, boom, I think 4 or 5 days later, the wife started feeling, funny as well, having similar pains and stuff. So I say, look, go test. Just know that, just so that you can know that you've got it or not. She goes and tests, and then she finds out that she's also got it. And then it wasn't lekker, obviously. Now there's 2 people in the house. My son, who's now 18, has to be the one who checks on us. There's a nanny as well, who checks on us. They'll cook and give us food. We both don't have appetite. They'll cook and literally leave it outside the bedroom door. And then when we're there, when the food is there, we'll then open and just get the food. But even then, we wouldn't have appetite. So we'll just...
So nenzani nje? What are you guys saying to each other?
We just talk as much as we can, but now the problem is one will pass out. Our sleeping patterns were different. And you'll just watch TV.
So anphuma
Asphuma. Literally asphuma. So the only time siphuma camera is when everyone is asleep. And that's ukuphuma ukuyostima. and come back. Or when the kid is asleep during the day, we'll phone them and say, look, you guys must be in one room. We need a bit of sun. So we need to go out and get some air. So we'll an hour in the garden and just get some air, talk. Chief, you won't even finish an hour. You just feel like
and then
tired. So that was the biggest problem because Ingozi is 2 years old and does not understand this. And you must remember, Ingozi sleeps with us in the bedroom. So now she's been locked out day and night. She would sit at that door, knock hard, cry until she sleeps. That was an everyday thing for 10 days. We didn't see Ingos, didn't want to get anywhere close to Ingos.
And what are you making of this situation now?
At that time, Chief, obviously with social media, with what's happening, you just have all these negative thoughts. Shucks, I'm dying, But then we try to motivate each other. No, don't worry, And trust me, friends and family came through in terms of calls and, sometimes we'd switch our phones off because it will be the time that I want to sleep or she wants to sleep. So you're thinking if so-and-so phones literally is on disturb, we look at the messages much later.
Who is more likely to get COVID-19? Or better yet, because I think anyone and everyone can be infected. What makes it worse or even fatal in some individuals and not others? The good doctor's back to answer these questions for us.
Why people are affected differently is because of the varying degrees of manifestations of COVID, right? So a lot of people can have asymptomatic disease, but you can have mild to severe disease, right? Where they just have, so asymptomatic, no symptoms whatsoever. But patients who have mild disease have fever, a bit of tiredness, a very mild cough, and then they recover from that and they do just fine, right? And then to your patients who have very severe disease where they have severe pneumonia, need to be in hospital, need to be on oxygen or even intubated and have a ventilator help them breathe, etc., right? I think the biggest issue in terms of whether patients really have mild or severe disease is predominantly because of a lot of comorbidities or risk factors, basically, right? So we know older patients will do the worst, right? So your older patients have a less robust immune system, so they tend to have more severe disease. And then also patients with other risk factors, so things such as obesity, right? Things like hypertension, things like diabetes, right? And high cholesterol, right? And then also if patients already have underlying lung issues, right, they tend to do a bit worse because you can imagine if you have an issue with your lungs or a chronic ongoing issue with your lungs, if you get that infection, it just makes it so much more worse.
Now, my friend Uzol Nzothini, ukhona engithola, he's gifted with the body. Sol is big. Hence, when he got COVID, and based on what the doctor has just said, we were proper worried about his well-being. I think himself included.
For me, when I got COVID, that's the same time that my favorite commentator of all time, Kaunda, passed on.
Oh, yeah. Kaunda is our age.
And Kaunda is pretty much my size. And you think all of those things. If he can pass on, who am I? And I'm Kaunda Ntunja is late. I just couldn't believe it. I'm this is not happening.
Yeah, none of us could believe it. I still don't think it
just still feels unreal.
Yeah.
Let's face it. Yes, there are these guys. There's only one Kaunda Ntunja, and there'll only be one.
Yeah,
you hear these guys, they're also good and so forth. But he just had that extra oomph. He just had that thing.
Slight segue. I have to give a big shout out to Kaunda Ntunja, a legend that left us way too early. He's on par with the likes of Baba Zamasondo, Ntate Baba Mtetwa, and Peter Drury. This clip I'm about to play for you is produced by SuperSport. It was Siya Kolisi's first game as the first black Springbok captain. Of course, Sol and I were at Ellis Park for this match. to see Sia lead out the Springboks in person. We have had many amazing nights and miserable nights at Ellis Park. I mean, I am a Golden Lion supporter after all. But this night was by far one of the best experiences ever. As a Springbok supporter, as a black dude, to see another black dude lead out the Springboks, amazing. Can't describe it. Best night ever.
Ngosuku luka 16 kaJune ngonyaka ka1991 kwazalwa usana lwakaKolisi eZwide olusana zange likhuliswe nguyise okanye unina olusana lakhuliswa ngumakhulu walo wathiywa ngegama ekuthiwa kusiyamthanda ngoba nangona wakhula kwintsokolo nentlupheko wayethandwa kakhulu. Ekukhuleni uSiya wadibana notata uEric Songwiqi. Wathi utata uSongwiqi kwathini wena uzokudlala umbhoxo kwaye ngenye imini uzoba libhokobhoko. Imento yakhe yamfaka embhoxweni. AmaNgesi athi the rest is history. Ngoku ke ifikile le mini esingayo. uSiya ngumkhokheli oqala ontsundu kwiqela lamabhokobhoko kumdlalo ovavanyo kulo Mzantsi Afrika omtsha. Phakamane Zwide! Phakamane Motherwell, phakamane Woma, phakamane kwaZakhele kwaMagxaki naseNew Brighton. Ngoba lo mfana wenu umele uMzontsundu, umele thina sonke. uSiya ngumzukulwana wethu, ngunyana wethu, ngumtshana wethu, ngumnina wethu, utata kaNicholas, umyeni kaRachel, uGqwashu, uGqiya, umkhokheli wethu. Itraka yesamente engana reverse gear. Hude, manike.
Now all of those thoughts are running through my mind. I'm gonna die. This thing is real. I shouldn't have. You started having all of this to a point whereby I started looking at my policies as well. We were chatting with the wife. I said to her, look, if I were to die, this, you are aware this is what.
So uzikhipile imali manje umtshelile zonke.
Angimtshele zonke ama secrets wonke. Like wazi wonke. There's none that's that's hidden.
Yeah.
So it's just like yo.
But anyway, on a side note, do you think that you are adequately sorted in that front? So if you were to pass away, your family sorted, you've done everything you needed to do.
No, I've done even before COVID. I think I always played it safe. If things were to happen to me, because we don't know how long we have, Chief.
Yeah, that's
if
true.
Things were to happen to me, my family will be sorted. So at that time, I had to check a few things and try to adjust a few things and all of that. One of the things I did actually quite interestingly was my car was left with 6 months. Now the extra buck that was there, I just used it to push my car, which I paid it off within the 2 months instead of the 6 months that was left. To say, let me not leave people with debt and all of that. So
Sure.
you just need to readjust and.
So you're saying that part of you had come to terms with the possibility of dying?
Absolutely.
And what is that like? What does that feel like?
Look, it's a matter of if I die, I die, and maybe it is my time. And you obviously, pray. I've never prayed so much in my life. Probably every hour I was praying. Without the wife. If she's asleep and I'm awake, could be 2 a.m. You must remember, you don't have a sleeping pattern to saying Lala from 8 until 6 a.m. Whenever you're tired, you sleep. Sometimes you don't sleep because what you read on social media is somebody passed on or a few people passed on in their sleep. There were times, I think 3 days or so, but I didn't want to sleep. Like, what if Nyaf? What if? Because you start having all those negative thoughts. What if this? What if that? What if that? What if, and then you just tell yourself, you know what, I'm not going to sleep. No, I can't die. Not my child is still young, this, that. And you just like, no, I can't die. Not now. And then you pray a lot. You speak to people to a point whereby social media was filled with all the negativity and people dying. that actually switched my phone off for a couple of days. So did the wife. But now we get enough of each other. We have to watch TV. TV is also full of so-and-so is just passed on. This is just a... I've never read so much. So I started reading, you know. I'm not big on reading, but look.
Did you read the book I gave you?
I did.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Didn't I give you 2 books?
Must bring it back.
2, ne? Kukaile, reading. Tando story.
I've done that, yeah.
And
I read that book during
I think it was something about, it wasn't state capture, but it's something.
Did you? I remember Tando.
Okay, the Tando we're referring to is Tando Manana, a former Springbok. The book in question is his biography, penned by Usbusiso Mjikeliso. It's explosive. If you want to understand what it's like to come from a township a lifetime away from the traditional route to rugby glory in South Africa, get yourself a copy. The book is titled Being a Black Springbok, the Tando Manana Story.
Tando's one I'm done with.
Okay.
I've read it. So I read John Smith, I read Tando, I don't remember this, but I read quite a few.
That's good. I'm proud of you.
I tried. I'm not big on reading. So yeah, so that was COVID. That was me getting COVID. Then I was out of COVID. Obviously, colleagues, friends, and family were just checking up on me the whole time. And yeah, it's encouraging to know that people love you out there, generally and truthfully and honestly. I'm just checking up on you. Just want to know. And trust me, when you are in that corner, you need those calls, you need those WhatsApps to motivate you. There were a few things, for example, that your wife sent me that, have you read this just to keep your mind busy. And I actually read those things.
Yeah.
And they kept my mind busy. Like you need something to sidetrack you, like so that you don't have to think about the situation you're in, So it was not a nice experience, but it was an experience.
As we near the end of this podcast, I want to focus on vaccines. Yes, vaccines. What are they? How do they work? And why are they important as an offensive strategy in the fight against COVID-19?
So what they do is basically take the RNA within the virus, right? And what the RNA is the same way that you have DNA that tells your body to make your eyes brown and your hair long or short or blonde or make you blue-eyed. It's the genome of the virus, right, that makes up the specific virus. So it has a code for it, the virus itself, and it makes up that virus, right? So all the things, the particles of the virus, the envelope for the virus, that's basically what it codes for, right? So what they've done with the vaccines is that they take the RNA and they process and manufacture that in the lab, right? And make vaccines from that, right? So they don't inject virus into the patients, but they take the RNA copy of the virus and actually process and manufacture that to make vaccines, right? So what happens is obviously when they inject the vaccine into patients, your body recognizes as non-self or foreign, and your immune system mounts a reaction to that. So when you do get a viral infection, your body's already primed to recognize, because you've already had a vaccine with the RNA in it, it already recognizes that RNA from the virus, from the actual infection, and it goes, ooh, here's this foreign thing again. And you've already got antibodies, so all it does is just multiply the antibodies that you have, so it fights the infection so much more quicker.
Thank you so much to Sol for sharing his story. But unfortunately for my brother, this was far from the end for him. Little did he know that some of his siblings would not be so lucky. Here's a snippet from part 2 of my conversation with him. This is when Sol went to hospital to account for his brother's body. The first of 2 visits to the same hospital to do the same thing.
Within a space of 7 days, 3 days, Labantu being now 16, that's the last time I saw them in December. Chief, to get there, utole umzimba literally bawurepile, it needs to go to the mortuary. And even going into those wards, it's just everyone who's got COVID, and you've got your mask and everything. In fact, to tell you the truth, when I walked in, there was a lady who was in the first ward on the left, and it still plays in my mind. She passed on when I walked in. Like they were trying to bring her back, but she passed on while I was there. I'm waiting for the nurses, they are all there. And why a student looked on, I don't know.
Thank you for staying until the end. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like and share, ring that bell to receive notifications. Our sources are the Department of Health and the World Health Organization. The audio clips are courtesy of Supersport and Global Citizen Live. Both were sourced from YouTube. Thank you to Sol and Dr. Mhlanga for their contribution.